Let's go out to someone that knows the Celtics very well. He used to be the radio voice. He's also a longtime talk show host, legendary in Boston. And that, of course, is the Big O in Glenn Ordway. Big O, appreciate the time. How you been, my friend?
You got it, Zach. How are you?
Well, I'm doing fantastic. So
Great.
If you just had to identify one person that Big O is most frustrated with right now in the Boston Celtics organization for these first two games, who would that person be?
I don't think it's one, but I think I would start with Joe Mazzulla. I mean, I think Joe Mazzulla does a good job of keeping these guys together during the course of the season. But we've seen this time and time again where you get big moments in games. And to me, NBA coaches are valuable, but they're not nearly as valuable as the players. Where they really are important is when you're coming up with key plays in the game. I thought it was an abomination that you do not call a timeout with 12 seconds remaining. The book calls for it. And the book also says that you shoot quickly so that you can, if you miss, you get the offensive rebound with the tap in. If you don't, get that rebound. The Knicks get it. You foul. They get 2 free throws, and you have one more possession in which you can tie and take the game in overtime. It's a chess game, and he's playing checkers out there. And Thibodeau is just simply out coaching him.
And I get it. He's not an emotional guy. There's times where they're winning. It sounds like they lost by 20 when he speaks to the media, and he's quirky whenever he talks to the press. I would have liked to have heard a little bit more energy, a little bit more fire, a little bit more accountability last night from the head coach of the Celtics.
Yeah, I would like to figure out, and I understand the strategy behind, the hack a foul on Mitchell Robinson. It makes sense. Pistons did the same thing. But why would you do it when they're not in the bonus? Why would you set them up in the bonus? And if you look back at the game, I'm not sure Brunson gets those free throws at the end because they're not into the bonus yet. You got to think these things out, and it's frustrating. But the second guy is Tatum. There's no denying it. I mean, Porzingis, I have no idea what's going on there. It's the strangest thing in the world, Zach. You know how good he is against the Knicks because he's got that vendetta and he wants to stick it to them. He has been useless in the first 2 games. And he was good down the stretch after he came back from the 11-game absence. But Tatum, if you want to be the face of the NBA, if you want to be one of those great players, if you want to be Kobe, you want to be LeBron, guess what? When your team is struggling out there, you need to take over the game. And he did not do that in either one of these games.
Yeah, how would you kind of describe Tatum? Because, I know he didn't win the Finals MVP last year, went to Jalen Brown. He was annoyed with the lack of minutes in the Olympics. And now this year, hey, I want the Knicks to win this series. The Celtics are the better team. The Celtics should bare minimum be at 1-1. They should probably be up 2-0. And he's let this now slip away twice. So is Tatum not as great as people thought he was? Or was it maybe, all right, the guy he's a top 10 player in the league, but not a top 5 player?
Listen, he hasn't gotten the great recognition, and he's been all top 5 in the all NBA first team last few years. So I think he's up there in that spectrum. The problem is he's playing with so many good players on this team that people don't give him that recognition. I mean, Joker's the best player on the planet.
Yeah.
And he's struggled a little bit at times this year because he hasn't had the great players around him or the depth. I think Saturday is a gigantic game, not only for the Celtics, but really for the reputation of Tatum. I think Tatum must come out and have one of those monster games where he just leads his team. Jump on my back, fellas. I'm taking you to Game 3 win. He has to have one of those games, or I agree. I think he's going to drop in perception, and we know what happens. Once that happens, then people don't look at you as a first-team NBA. Maybe you're second team or third team. So I think he's got a lot at stake here, and it'll be interesting to see how he plays.
For the future of this team, let's just say they don't come back. Let's say the Knicks win this series. I heard Windhorst today on ESPN was saying, maybe they look to break up this group with new ownership coming in. He mentioned Al Horford. Like, if they get rid of Al Horford, all right, it could be time. But do you see any way this offseason where this new ownership group says, all right, Tatum or Brown, we'll keep Tatum and then get rid of Brown or vice versa?
No, I don't. But I do think they're going to make major changes. So they're being bought out by a group now that's paying $6 billion. They are going to break the record next year with a payroll of almost $500 million. It'll be much larger than Golden State, and we know what they had to deal with and go through. So I think you're going to see major changes. If Porzingis can't come back and give you anything here, he's a nice player. He makes them much, much better when he is healthy and he plays because he has a unique skill level that plays into what they're doing. But if he can't stay on the court, you can't pay him all of that money. You got to let him go. I think Holiday is another guy they'll look to move right now. Drew's getting up there in age. He's got little nicks and bruises here and there from time to time. So I think they pick it apart that way with Horford, Porzingis, try to find a younger big that they can depend on. And I think they hold on to Tatum and Brown. But if they go down and lose this series, and I still am not convinced they're going to lose the series, by the way, but if they lose this series, all bets are off, Zach, because I think the public, and Boston is a lot like New York.
Yeah.
Public is not going to take it. They're going to be screaming about fire the coach. And you know what? Brown and Tatum, they're vastly overrated. It becomes very difficult to deal with the noise in the market.
And Mazzulla, I think even if they lose this series, I think he'll be back next year. But that seems on fire, especially when you see guys like Budenholzer win a championship, then get let go. Nick Nurse, even Mike Malone. Like, it's not crazy in the NBA where you win a championship and then a few years later you're out of a job.
Yeah, as I said, I think he's done a good job of keeping this group together, though they had a terrible record at home. And that may have something to do with the first two games that they took it for granted. We're at home. We can play. But you've sucked all year long at home. They have been a great road team. Yeah. And that's why I would caution Knicks fans. Game 3 and Game 4 is not a given. Knicks have not been a great home team. But the Celtics have been a phenomenal road team this year. And so they play much better for some reason on the road than they do at home. What we saw giving up big leads in those first two games in the series, we saw many times, Zach, during the regular season, and we saw it against some really piss poor teams, to be honest with you. And so they've got a track record that is not good at home. They are much better, far more focused on the road.
Do they get both here in New York, or you think they just get one or none?
I think they get both of them.
Wow.
But I do think it's going 7. I do think they have put themselves in a position where they're going to have a scratch and claw right to the end. I mean, the one thing I'll say about the Knicks, and I've got Knicks fans all pissed off at me on X because
they're mad at you for what?
Yeah, because I don't think the Knicks are that good. I'm sorry, they're not that good. Now, I'm not trying to pick on them. They're a 50-win team. Brunson is not only an exciting player, but he's the guy that I want to have the ball in his hands at the end of a game. Towns is a terrific, big, offensive player. He can hurt you at the other end. That's why you've got Mitchell Robinson out there. And your other players like Bridges, they have had trouble fitting in. Now, they've done a good job through the first two games. Your role players have done a really good job through the first two games. The Knicks are playing their ass off. They are not quitting. I'll give them all the credit in the world for effort. The Celtics are just a much more talented team. And I think at the end of the NBA, in 7-game series, I think in the end, usually the best team wins.
Big O, Glenn Ordway here with us for a few more minutes. Give me a feel on the Patriots right now. Vrabel coming in. It should have happened last year. Mayo should have never been the coach. But when you look at this Mike Vrabel version of the Patriots with Drake May at the quarterback, it seems like the Patriots are starting to get back on the right track and headed in the right direction.
Yeah, I wouldn't go crazy. I know a lot of people are looking at, the draft and saying, well, they filled that position, they filled that position. Well, you never know. As you know, Zach, you never know with the draft what guys are going to do.
Chad Jackson was supposed to be great in the second round all those years ago. Correct.
Oh, and the Patriots have been awful over the years' track record with guys in the second round, wide receivers in the second round. And so I still want to see it before I believe it. But really it comes down to Drake May. Is he going to get better here? I still think that the offensive line has a lot of questions, and we'll see how that plays out. Are they going to be better? Yes. But I think Boston people, some of the fans are going a little bit crazy when they're predicting 9 and 10 wins. That might be a stretch. Let's get to 7 first, okay? And then we can go from there and move on. But Vrabel, no question, has control of the franchise. He's the guy in charge, and I think that's a big difference from what we were dealing with last year. Who's in charge? Who's dealing with this? And Mayo seemed to be a little bit soft with taking charge and taking control. Players see that, and that creates a different type of atmosphere in that locker room.
If you were still hosting the big show in Boston right now on WEI, would Belichick, would that just be radio gold now with this 24-year-old girlfriend?
Oh my God. Are you kidding me? That would, oh my God. I mean, listen, if you want to have a relationship with somebody that's 50 years younger than you, okay. It's your private business and you can do whatever you want. And, some people will chuckle and laugh at it, but it's your private relationship. It's your private life. The problem I think Bill's made here, he's brought her into his public life.
Yeah.
And so instead of her being off limits, because wives, girlfriends, they're off limits, she is now on limits. And she has become a Saturday Night Live, included her in a skit this past Saturday night. And that's where you open up the door. You allow the public now to go at her, and she was a private person. So I've heard enough, and I've talked to enough players, and there's no question that players look at it and say, Bill always would tell us, never deal with distractions. We're going to eliminate them. And Bill has presented, I think, a major distraction for himself. And again, if you want to do it privately, some people would chatter, some people would talk. Yeah. You might say some stuff about it, but and people may snicker and laugh, but at least it's not going to be a disruption to what you're trying to get done. And I've never seen Bill Belichick. I interviewed Bill Belichick for an hour once a week during many of those years of that 20-plus year dynasty. I never had anybody ever come into the room and stop me in the middle of the interview and tell me that he can't answer that question.
He's had to answer questions after a murderer, right, with Hernandez.
Yes,
like he could answer these questions about his relationship, like a lot more serious stuff.
Zach, I've been around a long time. I've dealt with a lot of people. I've never dealt with anybody that has been able to not answer a question, refuse to answer a question, or answer it in a much different manner than Bill Belichick. He can shut down a question better than anybody I have ever dealt with. And to have this 24-year-old girl come in the middle of an interview with CBS.
It's pathetic.
This is not a TikTok interview. It's CBS. I love Bill. I think he's a great coach. I'm a little bit confused as what's going on right now.
And I understand, right? He wants to have the relationship. God bless him, whatever, even though it's weird to me. But and I love the next guy I'm about to mention. You can't basically allow her to become what Bears Nigerian was for all these years, except you're sleeping with him. Like we all know the role that Bears play for. That's what she is. She's Bears, except she has Nookie with him.
Yeah, apparently he did an interview yesterday with Susie Welch over at NYU, and to promote the book. And I heard that, and you had, I think, tweeted it out. Somebody had told you she wasn't there, right?
My cousin was there. He texted me.
She wasn't there.
And I go, well, is she there? He goes, not that I could see. Maybe she was backstage. I don't know. But he said he was looking the entire room for me. Could not find her.
I can tell you what she's doing this week. She's in Maine. She's part of the Miss Maine competition this week. So that's what she's doing this week. So maybe she's out of the picture. You brought up Bears Nigerian. He is now working with Billy O'Brien over at Boston College.
Yeah.
If I were Bill right now, I would, even though it might piss off Billy O'Brien, I would call Bears up and I'd say, how much do you want? Whatever you want. I'll write the check out right now. Please come in and help me. He did a phenomenal job over the years of being able to be that buffer in a professional way. And that's what he needs right now. Bill needs that.
Last thing I'll ask you, Big O, when we just get back to the Celtics. So Doc Rivers, I think when he was in Boston, a lot of us nationally thought he was this great coach, and since it hasn't aged well, is Mazzulla one of those Doc Rivers guy where you'll get a championship, but after that, it's not going to age all that well?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing we know about Doc Rivers is that he is another one of those guys that is great people person. So Doc is able to get teams to play together and be able to distribute the ball and things like that. And I think Joe has some of those qualities, and I'm not around there, so I don't see it, but I do hear and I do talk to a lot of people who tell me he's very good at that. But I think we've seen it time and time again, that when you get big plays out there in the court, he doesn't call a timeout. He goes totally against the book. And I'm not saying that at times you don't go totally against the book because you have great belief in somebody. But that last play, and then his excuse was, I didn't have to call the timeout. We knew what the play was. It was going to be that straight dunk. And of course the Knicks saw that that Tatum had the ball. They knew Tatum wasn't giving up the ball. So what did they do? Well, they knew that the pick was coming, and the first time when he dunked it, that pick was at midcourt. Next time it was top of the three. So the Knicks adjusted with that. You got to understand stuff like that. That's the stuff that just drives me crazy. And maybe it's inexperience, but come on, when you have a group that is loaded with this type of talent, then you got to be able to make the right decisions. And if you're inexperienced, that's a major, major problem. This looks like the Celtics team we saw 3-4 years ago when they were trying to find themselves, losing to Miami and things like that. They were trying to find themselves. This is a polished team. This is a really talented NBA roster.
And you start to wonder that championship was just an anomaly with what you've seen the last 2 nights. He's Glenn Ordway, radio legend up in Boston. Appreciate it, Glenn. Thanks so much.
Always great talking to you, Zach. Have a good one.